Top Gear this week from Motorfair 91, we review the new models on show at Earl's Court. Under test, Vauxhall's new Astra presents a stern challenge to the Escort, and how to encourage new motor racing talent to produce more British world champions. So this is it, the glossy face of Motorfair here in the new Earl's Court 2 hall. It cost £80 million. It's the biggest single unsupported arch in Europe, and you could park 4 jumbo jets in this place with ease. Now, initially, a lot of doubts about this year's Motorfair. Car sales are down 25%. The Rover Group decided to pull out altogether. But in the event, there's an awful lot to see here at Motorfair. I'll be out and about on the stands with Jeremy Clarkson and Nicky Fox.
Here on the Lotus stand is their new M200 Speedster. Stunning, isn't it? But it's never to be seen on the roads because it's a concept car, a way of gathering together a whole set of design and engineering ideas into one futuristic but working model. It might seem an extravagance in the face of redundancies of 1 in 3 on the production line since the ELAN was launched 2 years ago, but it's hoped that many of the incorporated ideas will find their way onto showroom models of the future. Can't wait. In the showroom now is the updated Esprit, full of what Lotus call customer-led improvements, such as a more spacious interior and better visibility through the rear window. And for the new year, a user-friendly hardtop for the ELAN, which can also be fitted to existing models.
Ford didn't exactly get very good press when they brought the Escort out about a year ago. It was criticised for having bland looks, a mediocre chassis and one of the worst ranges of engines to be found outside Warsaw. Well, launched here is the RS2000.
While manufacturers usually aim to launch a complete range all at the same time, the Escort has had to wait for a year for a version with some guts. A version that could give the rest of the lineup some much-needed pizzazz. This car represents Ford's first chance to show us that the standard Escort was a momentary aberration and that really they know what they're doing.
First things first, the chassis, and it's all good news. It feels like a sporty car should, especially on these wonderful seats. Steers like a sporty car should, and the handling is completely Gary-proof.
It also has Gary-proof looks. Ford, praise be, has resisted the temptation to go over the top, limiting any styling excursions to a brace of bulges in the bonnet, alloy wheels, and a discreet rear spoiler. But then they've spoiled what is so nearly an excellent package with a flawed engine. It delivers the goods quite well, but at high revs, it's noisy and harsh. My recommendation to you is take a test drive before you buy, just to make sure you can live with it.
My recommendation to Ford is rather more simple. Come on!
Well, they have been coming on. Some would say too little, too late, but this is the Zeta family of engines that they hope will finally crack all that criticism of their old power units. This is the 1.8-litre twin-overhead camshaft engine that we can see over there in the Escort XR3i. Now, I haven't driven it yet, so I can't tell you if it really does solve all those problems. Over the next 18 months, they'll be developing 1.6 and 2-litre versions of this engine that will power the Fiesta, the Escort and the Sierra. Interestingly, no 1.4-litre unit, and I think that's a major omission from the fleet market. Now, what the criticism of the Escort at the moment does do is open a window of opportunity for Vauxhall with their new Astra. That's a car I have driven. The new Astra will be appearing and disappearing on our roads for many years to come. Why? Well, it's 80% recyclable, so it's destined to be around in one form or another for a very long time. The Astra first emerged 10 years ago, and it's currently the 5th best-selling car in Britain. The new models have been developed on the floor pan of the old Astra, but from there on up, everything's different. This is the basic version of the Astra, the 1.4-litre 60-brake horsepower Merit. And although it's the base car, it still gets a 5-speed gearbox. All petrol-driven Astras have fuel injection and catalytic converters as standard. And although it's again base trim, it's very nicely finished and quite comfy. Back in 1985, the second-generation Astra was voted European Car of the Year, so the new model has a tough act to follow. Now, while Vauxhall obviously have their sights firmly set on the Escort in the UK market, the rest of Europe, General Motors, see Volkswagen's new Golf as the obvious target car. To that end, they've been spending a great deal of money at the Ellesmere Port factory to improve the fits and finishes of the panels on the new Astra. And looking at the way the front wing meets the corner of the door, they failed. Now, Vauxhall place great emphasis on the styling of the new Astra. They say they've borrowed extensively from the experience of the Calibra, the best-looking car they've ever made. Unfortunately, that's not true of this car. Despite the use of airflow management techniques in the sculpturing of the body, the rear dam and this lip to the hatch, this car has no better CD factor than the original shape, and I think that was much cleaner and crisper. There's no interior release for the hatch, and that's a bit inconvenient. They've lowered the parcel shelf, so rear vision is much better, and if you're off on holiday in the Alps, you've got plenty of room for the skis. They've extended the roofline back to improve rear headroom, but they've reclined the rear seats, and that leads to a rather uncomfortable seating position. Now, I always become irrationally angry when I straighten up from loading something and smack my head on the catch of the tailgate. In the Astra, it's high enough to avoid that, though I'm sure at some stage I'm going to crease myself on this fearsome tooth edge. Of course, not everyone's as careless as me. Major safety innovations in the new Astra. All the doors get high-tensile steel beams built into the frames, and that protects the occupants in the event of a side impact. And the seat belts are equipped with tensioners. That means if you do have an accident, they pull you tight back into the seat. Features like those are common across the wide range of Astra variants. There's cars, vans and estates, and there's a saloon version coming next year. Of course, the levels of interior trim vary widely. This is the 2-litre CD version. Nice bit of Ellesmere Port craftsmanship in the wooden door cappings, and the fascias look completely different from the old model and much more attractive. Particularly like the radio comes in 2 parts, so it's not worth stealing it from the car. It won't fit any other model. The 16-valve GSI versions get electronic anti-wheel spin control. You get the distinct feeling this version could use it as well. Power steering on this top-of-the-line model makes a big difference over the base Astra, which is a bit heavy. The steering itself doesn't adjust, and on a luxury specification model, I rather miss that. The car comes with a high level of equipment, manually controlled sunroof, electrically powered windows, and electrically powered mirrors. Even has a control for heating them in cold weather. Now, I'm a sucker for high gearing in cars. I hate going down motorways with the engine whining away up front. In that respect, the Astra is superb. At 30 miles an hour, it's only turning over at 1,000 RPM. It means at 70 miles an hour on the motorway, it's idling at around 2,300. And that makes for very relaxed cruising. Of course, it means around town in the country lanes, you have to use the gears a lot more, but the gear change is so nice, you really don't mind. This model has a maximum speed of 121 miles an hour and hits 0 to 60 in under 10 seconds. The suspension's been tuned for better ride and handling, and it certainly feels even sharper than the high standards set by the old car. And another safety bonus, the bigger engine versions in the range all have a sophisticated 4-channel anti-lock braking system as standard. Obviously, with the fleet business alone, Vauxhall are going to do very well with the new Astra. But beyond that, it's a well-equipped, comfortable and safe motor car. Watch out, Escort. So to sum up the Astra CD, we liked those extra safety innovations, the high level of equipment and the way they've restyled the interior. The ride was still a bit harsh, it could get a bit stuffy in the back of the car, and we had questions about the build quality of our pre-production example.
The word growth isn't one you hear very often in UK car sales these days, but there is one significant area of growth, and believe it or not, that's in diesels, from less than 0.5% to over 6% in 10 years. There's always been a bit of a stigma to diesel in Britain, but not so in Europe. In fact, it's the French especially who are pushing the new generation diesels. One of the latest crop is the new ZX from Citroën, announced at the show. Diesels will give you higher miles to the gallon, lower maintenance, lower depreciation and lower pollution. And if the customer can swallow the extra £800 initial cost, then the ZX could take over from the BX, which has been Britain's most popular diesel car for the last 4 years.
I'd like you to meet the new Honda Civic. Fantastic car this. Great looks, amazing build quality and a wonderful range of variable valve timing VTEC engines. And no obvious way of opening the boot. Now this is a split tailgate like you get on a Range Rover. The only thing is, there's no handle on the glass bit, so I can't for the life of me work out how to lift it up. Now TIFF NEEDELL, who of course is a racing driver and therefore far cleverer than I, will be road testing this car later in the series, and doubtless he'll have it all worked out. A car that does have its full complement of handles is the new Peugeot 106. Now this will also be road tested by someone other than me in next week's programme. Must have been something I said. Anyway, for what it's worth, I'll give you my 10 penneth now. The car is designed to fit at the very bottom of the Peugeot range. To that end, it's smaller and less expensive than the 205. However, the 205's continued good health is under serious threat because the 106 is just as spacious inside, it's faster, it's more economical, it's greener, and apparently it's safer. So just think, the 205 has fought off all those competitors over all those years, only to finally get stabbed in the back by its new baby brother.
Now, cars like this magnificent 4.5-litre blower Bentley attract the adoration of schoolboys and enthusiasts alike up here on the gallery at Motorfair. The difference between Motorfair and the Motor Show, you can actually buy many of the cars on display here. And they're not just museum pieces. This car was thundering around Nürburgring only 6 weeks ago. And it's for sale at a cool £500,000 if you happen to have that sort of money lying around in your hip pocket. But the stands up here are not all about great British cars.
Macho British sports cars are all very well, but I prefer macho American ones, so I picked this 65 Mustang, and not just because it goes with my jacket. There are lots of pony cars from the mid-60s still left in America, but they're a bit more unusual here. This one has some crucial features. Firstly, you've simply got to have the 289 V8 engine. And this one's a GT as well, which is rare in the convertibles. It's got a power hood, and the 4-speed manual gearbox is less common as well. I would have liked pony trim on the seats, but if they're willing to drop their price well below £12,000, I'll ask the bank manager to consider it.
Well, if Nicky wants to zap down Route 66, knocking the crows off the telegraph wires with the sound of her hi-fi, that's just the car to do it in. Me, I'm more a traditionalist with British sports cars, and I must confess to being a sucker for a big V8. So for me, the Sunbeam Tiger takes an awful lot of beating. The British have always had a long reputation for one-off sports cars that are made in little individual factories all over the country. Well, this is the latest in a long line of such machines from the Gold Motor Company. It's the Cirrus, and our very own TIFF NEEDELL has been driving it.
The Gold Motor Company was formed 7 years ago, and the Cirrus is their first production model to see the light of day. Designer and builder Nick Butler has received many awards for one-off creations. But this is a serious motor car. The shape is Porsche from one view, Ferrari from another. It's different from every angle. One moment you like it, the next you're not so sure. Not only is the Cirrus all new, but it's all British. Powered by the popular 3.5-litre Rover V8, the 200 horsepower is fed to a Ferguson four-wheel drive system. With a £45,000 price tag, it's rather underpowered against the supercar opposition, but the handling is neutral and the traction excellent.